In this lesson, I am going to address the question, what is blended learning? I want to explain how blended learning can transform instruction and empower both teachers and students. Most teachers have a vague idea about what blended learning is. They know that it is a blend of online and face-to-face activities. However, if that is all that blended learning is, then what is the big deal? How does it change or impact learning? That is the question that I want to tackle. First, let's look at what blended learning is not. Blended learning is not a silver bullet that will solve all our problems in education. We live in a broken world and nothing is going to fix that. But that doesn't mean that we should not do our very best to make a difference in the lives of our students. Second, blended learning is not meant to and never will replace a good teacher. A teacher who cares about her students and is dedicated to them cannot be replaced. That teacher will always make a difference in the lives of her students. Third, blended learning is not a quick fix. It will take time for teachers to find and create resources for implementing blended learning. Every teacher will work at a different pace. A teacher might start with one blended learning lesson or unit every 9 weeks and build on that in the following year. There are also different models of blended learning, such as the flipped classroom, station rotation, whole group rotation, and playlists. Teachers will have to discover what works best for them. And finally, it will also take time for students to adjust to blended learning because they will be expected to take more responsibility for their learning. Some students will resist this expectation, others will thrive in it. With that in mind, let's turn to what blended learning is. Here's a definition that is accepted by most educators. Blended learning is a formal education program in which a student learns, at least in part, through online learning with some element of student control over time, place, path, and/or pace, but also, at least in part, in a supervised brick-and-mortar location away from home. And the modalities or the various ways in which students experience learning in a course or subject, whether it is a learning management system such as Schoology or face-to-face instruction, small groups, video conferencing, or a learning platform like Edgenuity, whatever the modality, they are connected to provide an integrated learning experience. While this definition is a good one, it really doesn't get at the heart of blended learning. It is possible to meet all the characteristics of this definition and still be a terrible experience for both the teacher and students. However, there are some hints in this definition that are helpful. For example, it refers to online learning. One of the key features of blended learning is that the teacher posts instructional videos, assessments, assignments, and discussions to an online learning management system like Schoology. This shift to online instructions sets the teacher free from always being in front of the classroom and gives him or her the opportunity and the time to work with small groups and individuals to close learning gaps and help students who are struggling to keep up. A second helpful hint in our definition is that blended learning ideally should give the student some control over time, place, path, and/or pace of learning. This leads us to another key concept of blended learning: personalization of instruction. Because instructional content, such as instructional videos, assessments, assignments, and discussions are online, student progress can be tracked. This data can provide teachers with valuable information that should be used to adjust instruction and differentiate it for every student. Schoology has several features that makes this possible. A third key to blended learning is that teachers must design assignments that actively engage students and challenge them to create products that demonstrate what they have learned. The product could be a research paper, a movie, a presentation, a song, a speech, an illustrated poem, a poster, a travel brochure, a dance, a drawing, a demonstration, a photograph, a debate, a weather forecast, a science experiment, whatever. Now, it can be argued that a teacher in any classroom should be designing lessons that actively engage students. That is true. In fact, many practices of blended learning are what many good teachers are already doing. However, in this case, a blended learning teacher is more likely to expect students to create their products with digital tools. The products will often look more professional and will be easier to share with others. There are many more characteristics of a blended learning classrooms. Students will be expected to take more responsibility for their learning. Discussions will often be asynchronous and will usually involve critical thinking. Instruction will shift from teacher-directed to student-centered learning. To effectively implement blended learning, teachers must be able to develop and enhance new skill sets. If teachers do not have the necessary skills, or they do not feel confident or competent in the use of these skills, then they will look at Schoology, blended learning, and technology as something to be avoided rather than embraced. Therefore, it is critical that all teachers receive professional development that equips them with the necessary skills to implement blended learning. To conclude, I would like to share a quote from one of my favorite books on this subject. Blended learning holds enormous potential to transform our factory model education system into a student-centered design that captures the benefits of personalization, equity in access, and cost control. Although it is not a panacea for increasingly antiquated schools and the students in those schools, it is an essential piece of the puzzle. I hope my explanation of blended learning has been helpful. I also encourage you to become a part of the Active and Blended Learning Academy, where these ideas will be greatly expanded upon.